Inside Corcoran State Prison, California. Before you ever step inside Corcoran State Prison, one thing becomes clear: long before the steel gates open, this place carries a reputation that even other prisons talk about. For decades, Corcoran has been the center of some of the most disturbing scandals in California's correctional history, from deadly inmate-on-inmate fights in the 1990s, to high-profile inmate cases, to federal investigations that shook the state's prison system. Every story you hear here is real. Every allegation discussed in this documentary is supported by publicly available reports, court filings, or official investigations. This is Corcoran State Prison, a facility where fact has often sounded stranger than fiction. And today, we're going inside.
Before we dive into today's powerful story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support helps us keep sharing these stories, and we wouldn't want you to miss any of the action. Now, let's get started.
The birth of Corcoran, why this prison was built. Corcoran State Prison, officially known as the California State Prison, Corcoran, CSP-CR, opened its doors in February 1988. Its creation wasn't random. It arrived during one of the most turbulent chapters in California's criminal justice history. By the mid-1980s, California's prison population was growing at a pace the state could barely keep up with. Tough on-crime policies, longer sentences, mandatory minimums, all of it combined to create a system under intense pressure. Corcoran was designed to be part of the answer. It wasn't just another prison. It was built as a Level 4 maximum security facility, engineered for inmates the state considered high-risk, high-profile, or difficult to manage. The sprawling complex was constructed on over 80 acres, with additional support facilities stretching across hundreds more. When it opened, it already had the capacity to house thousands, but California's prison population would soon grow far beyond anyone's expectations. Corcoran immediately became one of the most secure and tightly controlled facilities in the state. But the real story of Corcoran isn't just about concrete, fences, and cell blocks. It's about what happened inside. The prison layout, a facility built for control. To understand what Corcoran became, you have to understand how it was built. The facility consists of several distinct units, each designed for a specific function, and some designed for inmates considered so dangerous they rarely, if ever, interact with others. The housing units. Corcoran includes Level 4 General Population Yards, Administrative Segregation Units, ASU, Security Housing Units, SHU, Protective Custody Units, Mental Health Units, a standalone facility known as SATF, a substance abuse treatment facility built adjacent to the main prison. Most controversial among these historically was the Security Housing Unit, where inmates spent up to 23 hours per day locked in their cells. Movement and surveillance. Corcoran was built with multiple layers of security. Guard towers stationed throughout the facility. Electronic gates and controlled movement corridors. Centralized command centers controlling inmate movement. High-visibility yards intended for constant surveillance. On paper, the design made sense. Corcoran was meant to keep the most volatile inmates separated and monitored. But in the years ahead, these systems would become central to some of the most shocking allegations ever leveled against a California prison. The 1990s Gladiator Fights scandal. No part of Corcoran's history has been more public, more documented, or more disturbing than what became known as the Gladiator Fights. And unlike rumors or prison folklore, these incidents are supported by sworn testimony, court documents, investigative reports, and statewide media coverage. Here's what happened. The allegations. Throughout the early to mid-1990s, multiple correctional officers, inmates, and investigators reported that some Corcoran guards were intentionally placing rival gang members together in exercise yards. The result was predictable: violent fights, often ending with gunfire from tower guards ordered to stop the attacks. Some whistleblowers claimed these matches were done deliberately. Others claimed they were encouraged. Several said staff bet on the outcomes, though not all of these claims were ultimately proven in court. Inmates were shot multiple times during these incidents. In some cases, inmates were killed. The whistleblowers. One of the most widely known whistleblowers was Officer Richard Caruso, who testified that certain supervisors orchestrated these fights. Statements from other officers, including those who denied wrongdoing, were documented in both federal and state investigations. The official response. The scandal triggered a federal investigation, a state investigation, a 1998 grand jury indictment against 8 officers. However, the indicted officers were later acquitted, with the jury concluding the prosecution failed to prove that the shootings were unlawful or that staff intentionally set up fights. Still, the scandal left a permanent mark. Multiple oversight agencies, including California's Inspector General, documented systemic issues at the prison, including use of force practices and supervision failures. The events of the 1990s would reshape Corcoran's internal policies for years. The high-profile inmates of Corcoran. Corcoran's population has included some of the most well-known inmates in California's correctional system. This isn't for drama, it's documented fact. Charles Manson. After multiple transfers, Charles Manson spent significant periods housed in Corcoran, especially during the 1990s and 2000s. His classification as a high-risk inmate placed him in secure housing, often under restrictions due to safety concerns and his notoriety. Juan Corona. Known as one of the most prolific convicted serial killers in California history, Juan Corona was also housed at Corcoran during parts of his incarceration. Sirhan Sirhan. Sirhan Sirhan, convicted of assassinating Senator Robert F. Kennedy, was transferred between various California prisons, including periods at Corcoran during the 1990s and 2000s. Not all high-profile names are public. Due to privacy and safety policies, the CDCR does not always publicly confirm where every high-profile inmate is located at all times. Some transfers are documented, others remain unconfirmed until inmate records are updated. These individuals didn't define Corcoran, but they added to its reputation as a place where the state sent inmates it didn't trust to house anywhere else. Use of force, the documented patterns. To understand Corcoran's story, you have to understand the way force was used inside the prison, and how that force became one of the most scrutinized aspects of its operations. Use of force in prisons is complicated. Correctional officers operate in violent environments, often surrounded by individuals with long histories of assault, gang activity, or escape attempts. Split-second decisions can determine whether staff or inmates survive a confrontation. But what drew national attention to Corcoran was not simply that force occurred, it was how often, how intensely, and under what circumstances. A pattern that raised eyebrows. Reports throughout the 1990s and early 2000s documented a significantly higher number of shootings at Corcoran compared to other prisons in California. This wasn't rumor. These numbers came from CDCR internal reports, Inspector General audits, public records, court testimonies. Many incidents involved warning shots or rubber projectiles. Others involved live ammunition. Some shootings were found justified. Some were found within policy but concerning. And a few were found to have violated procedural expectations. The 1994 Internal Review. One of the earliest major internal reviews, conducted in the mid-1990s, highlighted troubling patterns. High frequency of incidents involving live rounds. Concerns about inadequate communication between towers and yard staff. Repeated confrontations between rival gangs during yard time. While the department did not publicly state that fights were being intentionally staged, the findings acknowledged serious supervisory failures and unacceptable risk patterns. Whistleblower accounts. Multiple officers across several investigations alleged improper use of force. Failures to de-escalate situations. Warning signs ignored by supervisors. Retaliation against staff who raised concerns. Not all allegations were proven. Some remained unconfirmed. Others resulted in policy changes. Policy reforms. By the early 2000s, CDCR implemented several major changes. Revised use of force reporting. Mandatory camera coverage in high-risk units. New training protocols focusing on de-escalation. Increased oversight from Sacramento headquarters. Did these reforms solve everything? Not immediately, but they marked a turning point in how Corcoran operated. Daily life inside Corcoran, the reality behind the walls. On the outside, Corcoran's reputation has often been shaped by scandals, headlines, and investigations. But inside the walls, daily life is shaped by something far more routine: structure. Every inmate and every staff member at Corcoran operates within a rigid, scheduled environment designed to maintain order. Housing conditions. Depending on classification, inmates may be housed in double cells in general population, single cells in sensitive or high-security units, administrative segregation for disciplinary or safety reasons, protective custody for inmates at risk, mental health units for those with documented conditions. Most cells are roughly the standard size for Level 4 prisons: space for 2 bunks, a toilet, a sink, and limited personal property. Movement. Movement is tightly controlled. Inmates leave cells only when escorted or during scheduled yard time. Hallway doors are electronically operated and centrally monitored. Interactions between rival groups are minimized by design. The system wasn't built for freedom. It was built to minimize risk. Meals. Meals are served 3 times per day, often in a mix of dining hall service for some general population units, in-cell feeding for high-security or segregated units. Food is standardized across CDCR facilities, designed to meet nutritional requirements within strict cost limits. Programs. Despite Corcoran's reputation, programs do exist. GED and education courses. Substance abuse treatment. Limited vocational programs. Behavioral therapy sessions. Religious services, depending on security level. Access varies depending on classification level and disciplinary history. Yard time. General population inmates receive outdoor yard time structured around exercise areas. Small recreation cages for segregated inmates. Supervising officers positioned on the yard perimeter. Constant monitoring from the tower above. For inmates in the SHU or ASU, yard time often takes place in restricted, individual enclosures. Atmosphere. Interviews and reports describe Corcoran's atmosphere using words like tense, controlled, structured. Life inside depends heavily on where an inmate is placed. Some units are relatively calm. Others have long histories of gang-driven violence. There's no single, Corcoran experience, only a complex system of environments, each with its own unwritten rules. Gangs and security threats, the invisible force. This is the part of Corcoran's history that explains almost everything else. Gangs. California's prison system has long been shaped by powerful and organized groups that control communication, distribution, conflict, alliances, and decisions that reach far beyond cell blocks. Corcoran is no exception. Major documented groups. CDCR's Public Security Threat Group, STG, classifications identify several major gangs that historically operated inside Corcoran. Mexican Mafia, La-Im. Nuestra Familia. Aryan Brotherhood. Black Guerrilla Family. Serenos, Southern California affiliates. Norteños, Northern California affiliates. These groups influence day-to-day behavior, movement, alliances, violence, and control of contraband. Violence isn't random. Reports show that most violence inside Corcoran has historically been gang-related, retaliatory, ordered through established hierarchies, This doesn't mean every inmate is involved. But it does mean staff must constantly plan around these allegiances. The challenge for staff. Security in a prison like Corcoran isn't just about walls and towers. It's about understanding. Who can be housed near whom? Who needs to be kept separate? Which groups cannot share a yard? Which individuals hold influence? Which tensions are rising inside and outside the prison? One wrong placement can trigger an entire incident. Gang management policies. In response to years of violence, CDCR implemented threat assessment reviews for every inmate. Sensitive needs yards, SNY, for inmates who left gang life. Behavior-based classification, reducing reliance on group labels alone. Debriefing processes for inmates seeking gang disengagement. These policies reshaped daily operations not just at Corcoran but statewide. Medical care under scrutiny. One of the most impactful chapters in Corcoran's history has nothing to do with violence, and everything to do with healthcare. During the early 2000s, a federal court placed California's entire prison medical system under receivership after finding systemic failures. Corcoran was among the prisons cited in the case. The findings. Before reforms, investigations documented delayed access to medical care, inadequate record keeping, insufficient staffing, poor chronic care management, inconsistent emergency responses. These problems weren't unique to Corcoran, they were statewide. But Corcoran's size and high-risk population made deficiencies more visible. Federal takeover. In 2006, a federal receiver took control of the prison medical system, implementing new standards and oversight. For Corcoran, this meant expanded clinic facilities, new electronic records, increased medical staffing, regular compliance audits, improved mental health procedures. Mental health. Mental health care became a major focus, especially in high-security units where isolation could intensify symptoms. Policies were updated to ensure more frequent clinical checks. Suicide prevention protocols. Specialized housing for severe cases. These reforms gradually changed the prison's medical system, though challenges still exist, as documented in ongoing annual reports. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more deep-dive documentaries backed by real reports, official records, and verified history, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment below on which prison, case, or hidden story you want uncovered next. Until then, stay safe, and stay curious.